information that you've been receiving from an organization called Tenants Together, who've been appearing before you since last year. They're requesting that the City Council adopt a local ordinance requiring just cause for evictions in the city.
But hopefully I can clear up some of the questions you have and certainly answer any additional ones that you might pose about just cause for eviction ordinances.
The difference between the federal act that we have in front of us and the ordinance that was given to us.
So I think that the protection is longer under what's proposed by the Tenants Together group than is provided under the federal statute.
And the idea that federal law is sufficient and that this doesn't do anything and it's just duplicative is really inaccurate. This provides that people who continue paying their rent and complying with their rental obligations will be able to remain housed instead of being pushed out on the 90-day timeline.
Is as long as the tenant continues to have a valid lease and meet their obligations, including paying rent, that simply the change of ownership related to foreclosure is not a cause for eviction unless the property is sold to someone who intends to occupy it as a single-family resident themselves.
How many other cities in California have adopted this or an ordinance like this?
There are currently 15 cities in California with some form of just cause for eviction law.
One of the things you want to know is the organization being straight with staff and the council? They've worked well with other communities. The information that they've provided has checked out in terms of being accurate, and they've had a good relationship.
Did they find much budgetary impact? I mean, did you talk to them at all about this, and what was their impact on this?
So it's an initial learning curve. It's a matter of designating somebody off to go understand the case law.
The city is itself a landlord and has been in landlord-tenant relationships, so I would hope we know the basics.
A tenant that finds themselves in this situation can use it as a defense in the eviction process. At that point, the city's not involved at all.
The city absolutely can decide what is and what is not a valid basis for eviction. And any challenge to that, the law really is very well settled. Any challenge to that, I don't foresee one because I think anyone would be crazy to file it because it would be dismissed summarily by a motion. And we'd be happy to assist with any kind of motion on that issue.
I think the only other substantial concern we would have is if there's a challenge to the ordinance by, say, a major lender with substantial resources.
Since the mid-'80s, in a case called Gross versus Superior Court, this issue was litigated and was resolved. And this is 20 years later. And the court said Gross versus Superior Court and the cases from the 80s are still good law. And
with this in place, how does that work? So they pay, I mean, they continue to pay the rent to the bank, or, I mean, what's the process with that?
just like any other purchase of property or transfer of ownership, the new owner takes title subject to the rights and obligations. The tenant continues to have the same rights and obligations.
We're not treading on anybody's ownership rights other than the banks. And if the banks had been proper stewards in the first place, we probably wouldn't see a need to do that.
We're trying to get the banks to realize it doesn't even make sense what they're doing to communities by just having these policies where they automatically evict everyone. And then these places sit empty. There are a lot of landlords out there that want to buy property with tenants in it.
The banks just amaze me that they'd rather sit on a vacant piece of property than get rent out of it. You know, they have responsibilities to shareholders. How can they sit on a property and not get rental income off of it while they're trying to dispose of it?
The bank would then have the right to raise the rent because they are the new owner, month to month.
Yeah, month to month, absolutely correct. They could raise the rent.
And they can do that after the end of the lease, too.
That's right.
So if Wells Fargo forecloses on a house and the water heater blows up, who comes and fixes it?
They're really like any other landlord. There's absolutely no reason that Wells and B of A or whoever it is can't hire a property management company, and that's what they do now. But that was a major issue early on in the foreclosure crisis when they were refusing to embrace the fact that they were landlords and had to make those repairs.
The city council has several responsibilities. One of them is to provide good policy. One of them is to provide good legal decisions, and the other one is to provide good moral decisions. And to be honest with you, this is the moral high road. It is the right thing to do. I think we all know it in our gut that it is the right thing to do, and I feel a moral obligation to support it.